program. Thank you all so much for joining us at such a rush time afternoon, but I'm thankful that everyone could join, and I hope we can all learn from the presentations that are prepared by our keynote speaker as well as the students. And we can all learn something about preserving our water because we all know how precious it is. Thank you once again. I'm going to hand over to Prof Aufolo, who's going to do the welcome remarks before we head into the presentations. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Director of the event. Thank you so much, Ronel, for the introduction. My name is Omotayo Awufolu. I'm going to switch on the camera so that at least our external audience can also actually, put the name to the face. Thank you so much once again. We all know, the essence of this event, which is organized by the SASSCAL graduate student program, which is under the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Partnership, and in conjunction with SASSCAL. Now, we are a directorate which is headed by our executive director, who actually provide the strategic direction, for research within NOST. It's headed by Dr. Matros Goresis, who I can see she's also, online with us. And as we go on, I'm sure she would probably also want to encourage us with respect to the event. As I mentioned, my name is Omotayo Awufolu, the Acting Director of Research and Postgraduate Development at NOST. We have in our presence our graduate students, the PhD students, that will be making the first two presentations. And of course, we also have our guest speaker, Professor Larry Swatuk, who is an emeritus and an expert on the issue of water. And our program director will do the introduction of our guest speaker later on when it gets to that particular point. And as a brief background, we know that the World Water Day is usually, celebrated on the 22nd of March of every year. And it's an attempt to basically highlight the importance of fresh water. As they always say, water is life. We can survive. People can survive without electricity for days, for weeks and months. But when it comes to water, it becomes very difficult for survival to occur. And the day is usually used to, highlight the importance of water and to actually also bring the awareness, of the fact that there are millions of, possibly billions of people, around the world that do not have access to clean drinking water. Hence, it's an opportunity. The awareness is an opportunity for us to, to be aware of the importance of water at the micro level. When we say the micro level, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in our community, in terms of water preservation and water conservation. And it's an opportunity for us to also contribute, should I say, our quota in whatever respect that we can in terms of assisting in water conservation and preservation. That's why you find that in, at homes and in public places, the issue of using smart, taps that will assist in conserving water. It's not just about the fact that I can afford it, I can pay for it, but there are millions or billions of people that do not even have access. So that's why it's important for us to highlight the importance of water. And in addition, it's also to bring to our attention that water conservation and preservation is part of the Sustainable Development Goals, Goal 6, which of course has the theme of sanitation and water. That the world is aiming, perhaps to achieve the access to water by 2030. It may seem to be laudable, but a step in time. Is a contribution towards that effort. If each and every one of us, make effort to contribute our quota in terms of, access to water, water conservation, water preservation, it will go a long way in contributing to that goal, Sustainable Development Goal 6, for access to water by 2023. And with that, having said that, I would like to once again, welcome us all, and we really thank you for making time to join us. As a water conservation, should I say, group under the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Partnership, and for your time that you've made to join this event. We thank you all. Thank you so much, everyone. Back to you, Madam Director of Ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Follow. Thank you so much. I just realized that we actually missed on giving an overview of what SGSP is all about. I'm sure everybody just hears SGSP. So SGSP is a 3-year PhD academic program developed in response to the need of adequate human resources, as well as water resources management and sciences, particularly in the SASSCAL nodes or the SASSCAL member states and the SADC community. So without further ado, I will welcome Ms. Maria Kanyama. She has a presentation that she will present to us. So I really hope everybody is buckled up, and let us learn and explore how to preserve our water and celebrate this day. Thank you. Maria, are you audible? Should I share your presentation, or are you able to share it yourself?
I think you can share it from your side.
All right. Can you see my screen, Maria?
Yes, I can see it.
All right. Just tell me to move the slides as you go about it.
Okay. Are you not going to put? Oh yeah. All right. Cool. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to celebrate the World Water Day. My name is Maria Nelao Kanyama. I'm a PhD student under the SASSCAL Graduate Studies Program in Integrated Water Resource Management. This is work in progress of my schoolwork that I'm under the supervision of Professor Bunushava, Professor AMG from the Computer Science Department at NAST, and also Professor Andreas Hartmann from Dresden Technical University in Germany. So for this afternoon, I'm going to give you a talk on leveraging machine learning for anomaly detection in water networks. As we commemorate this World Water Day, it's very important we explore how cutting-edge technologies such as machine learning are transforming the way we safeguard our precious water resource to promote this. So join me as we go into the fascinating world of anomaly detection in water networks and discover how hastening of the power of data can pave the path towards a more sustainable and harmonious future. Ronel, can we go to the agenda? Okay, so for this presentation, this is the agenda for this presentation. I'll give you a brief introduction, take you through the water networks, give you the challenges and impact of these water networks, take you through the importance of machine learning, anomaly detection, and then give you the whole data collection for this presentation, results, conclusion, and then I'll give you future work. Ronel, next slide. Did you know that every drop of water holds the potential to shape a more peaceful world? Why? Because water resources are indispensable for sustaining life, fostering socio-economic development, and promoting peace and stability both at local, regional and global level. So we need to recognize the value of water by adopting these holistic approaches towards its management. It is very crucial in addressing the current challenges and building a more resilient and peaceful world. Next slide. As per the report by the Water Infrastructure Resilience of 2023, water networks hold a pivotal status as a critical national infrastructure. This infrastructure play a fundamental role in sustaining community and industry. While water is a naturally abundant resource, its value has escalated substantially in recent years due to the dual challenges such as climate change, poor infrastructure, lack of anomaly detection mechanism, as well as overexploitation. Let me take you through the whole water network. Figure 1 shows the water network featuring water meters placed across various households. These water meters serve the critical function of measuring water consumption, transmitting the data from water utilities to from the customer premises to the water utilities for monitoring and facilitating accurate billing processes. However, these networks are without challenges. The inherent complexity of water distribution networks makes them very prone to anomalies such as illegal connection and leakages, just to mention few. These issues not only compromise the integrity of consumption data that is being measured within these networks, but it also strains the relationship between consumers and water utilities. So therefore, to address the challenges and foster a harmonious relationship between customers and water utilities, we need to leverage the cutting-edge technologies. By implementing advanced monitoring solutions such as near real-time data analytics using machine learning, we can proactively detect anomalies, prevent water losses, as well as enhance transparency in billing processes. So moving on to the challenges. Number one, these water networks are prone to different challenges, such as number one, aging infrastructures. Many water networks globally are built on aging infrastructure, which leads to leak, burst, and inefficiencies in water distribution. And secondly, we are facing water scarcity. As we all know that Namibian population just doubled within a decade, growing population and climate change leads to water scarcity issues, putting pressure on water networks to deliver sufficient water to meet the demand. And the third one is leakages and non-revenue water as one of the challenges. Non-revenue water, I'm referring to water that is being delivered to consumer, but is not accounted for. So leakages from these aging pipes and illegal connection result in non-revenue water, leading to financial losses for water utilities and inefficient resource allocation. So why the importance of machine learning anomaly detection techniques? Number one, they offer speed, and it's just for speed and efficiency. Machine learning algorithm can process vast amount of data quickly. As we all know that these water meters produce a large amount of data. So we need now to enable real-time or near real-time anomaly detection by using this data. And second one, machine learning offer precision. Machine learning algorithm can identify anomalies that may be missed by the traditional method, because currently people are being used as sensors to detect these leakages and illegal connection, leading to a more accurate detection. And number three, adaptability. Machine learning algorithm can continuously learn and adapt to new data, which then enhance their ability to detect the emerging anomalies within these networks. Taking you through to our data collection. In this study, we used a real water consumption data collected from Windhoek as our primary data set for our analysis. To ensure the robustness and reliability of our findings, we then implemented a series of data pre-processing strategies to carefully select and tailor the data set to what we are looking for. So in order to aim to enhance the quality and suitability, the data set had missing values as a result of meta malfunction or poor recording purposes. So to ensure that the data set was complete, we handled the missing data in this data set by removing all the water meters that has missing data. So a total of 1,375 was reduced to 751 water meters that was then evaluated using our model on the right-hand side, which is the LSTM autoencoder model, which stands for long short-term memory autoencoder. This is just an innovative architecture that incorporates LSTM units, long short-term memory units, within both the encoder and decoder component of our autoencoder framework. Whereby in the decoder phase, the model uses household water consumption data, utilizing LSTM memory cells to capture the temporal dependencies across this water consumption data point. Through this process, the model then reduces the high dimensional input vector representation while mapping it to a lower dimensional runtime space. So the decoder does, the LSTM uses LSTM as part of also the decoding process, which then operate within the latent space, reconstructing the original fixed size input that is being received from the encoder. Anomalies in water consumption data are identified by analyzing the reconstruction error rate within the predefined threshold guiding, which then guide us to anomaly detection. So one of our objective was to look at the different types of anomalies that can be encountered within these networks. Ronald, next slide. So number one, what we've picked up, which is being illustrated by figure A, is inconsistent zeros. Meta malfunction, for instance, can result in the failure to record water usage, which then leads to the appearance of consistent zero patterns, as is shown by the figure. Furthermore, properties left unoccupied for an extended period of time due to seasonal fluctuation and other reasons can contribute to this type of anomalies. Faulty connection within the water supply network can also lead to these zero consumption readings. Identifying these types of anomalies carries a significant importance for utility providers as it enhances accurate billing, making the prompt detection of meta malfunction a financial imperative. In cases of unoccupied properties, addressing the meta needs is very vital to ensure water supply infrastructure remain functional. So we need now to be able to identify this type of anomalies. Moving on, figure B shows the compound anomaly. This anomaly are a convergence of multiple distinct anomalies, rendering the identification of more than one anomaly. As is shown by the figure, there's a sequence of sudden increase in consumption, followed by non-recording period, and then it stabilizes. So this can be an indicative of burst pipes, subsequent repair, or eventual resumption in regular usage. So this compound anomaly underscore the interconnectedness of the various factors within that can contribute to anomalies within the water networks. And figure C shows the surge spike, which is also another type of anomaly. The anomaly of surge spike in water consumption is shown whereby it's marked by the sudden and transient escalation in usage, which then unveil the intricate dynamics governing water consumption under unique circumstances. These anomalies can be due to special event, festival, or even the malfunction of water supply systems. But we can all see that even if there is a party, the water consumption in C was around about 120, which is so abnormal. So this is another different types of anomalies. We then conducted a study to find the different types of machine learning that can be used in order to detect these different types of anomalies. And we have found out that a lot of researchers have used supervised machine learning, whereby this require a reliable data set. But in the real world, the real world dataset comes with no labels. Hence, only few have tried to test this machine learning on unsupervised, which is shown by 14%. We have also found out that random forest support vector machine, autoencoders, KNN have been used in anomaly detection research within these various water networks. And the choice of machine learning also depends on the whether it's labeled or unlabeled dataset, and the specific anomaly detection problem that is being addressed. Moving on to our model, which is the LSTM autoencoder. According to Kanyama and colleagues for 2024, they mentioned that there's a significant open issues within these water networks monitoring, which is the adaptability of these evolving networks. And anomaly patterns within the water networks can shift over time due to evolving behavior or the emergence of the new attack vectors. Addressing this challenge requires the development of adaptive self-learning anomaly detection algorithm capable of continuously evolving to detect these new anomalies. Hence, we have used a long short-term memory autoencoder, which then presents the promising approach, because here we are employing the reconstruction error, whereby the LSTM autoencoder assess how effectively it can reconstruct the input data, which is our water consumption data, which then serves as our metric for anomaly detection. This methodology allows the system to dynamically adapt to changing anomaly patterns, which then ensure a robust and effective anomaly detection in real time. What we have tried to test it on 3 different architecture, whereby they all have different depth and different hidden units. And then we have used our validation loss to ensure that the architecture is able to generalize the unseen data. So for our architecture 1, we have used the one for 6432, but then we can tell that that architecture 1 was able to generalize the unseen data due to a lower validation loss compared to the other 2. We then looked at the impact of training and validation loss, whereby we have picked up that at epoch 45 to 50, the validation loss present a similar loss as the training loss, which is then regarded as a good fit of our model. Therefore, the modeling of reconstruction error shows that lower construction error, the model is able to capture the input that was fed into the model. Conclusion, we can see that anomalies present challenges within these water networks, and various anomalies can be encountered with these networks. So LSTM autoencoder reconstruction error can be used as the threshold to detect these anomalies. And then we can now say that we can ensemble LSTM autoencoder with other various machine learning so that we can be able to come up with a robust machine learning anomaly detection model that can be used within these water networks. Next. These are our references. Next. And finally, I would like to thank our sponsor, which is SASSCAL Graduate Studies Program, and for Women in Science Program for sponsoring this research. And this is the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you for that informative presentation. I think we all can agree that she deserves a virtual hand of applause. Just to add on, we will have a question or interaction session after the next presentation. So when we're done with both the presentations, you can feel free to ask a few questions, not too many, because we don't really have so much time, but just a few questions to our presenters. So next up, we have Mr. Tafila, also a PhD student who will be discussing his, he also has a presentation that will be looking towards the same theme, which is leveraging water for peace for this seminar. Thank you so much. Tafila, should I share your presentation or will you be able to do it yourself?
I think I will share it from my end.
No problem. Thank you. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Director of the session. Can you all see my slides?
Yeah, can see it.
Oh, okay. All right. Good day, everyone. Welcome to my presentation titled Investigating the Okavango Delta Water Dynamics Towards Attaining Water for Peace. I'm a PhD student in the SGSP IWRM program pursuing my studies in the hydrology and hydrogeology thematic area. And this work that I'll be presenting is supervised by Professor Kumar, Professor Mwalafi, and Prof Rode. My presentation today will be a snippet of my ongoing research in the Okavango Delta, where I'll be looking at surface water dynamics in the Delta. This year's World Water Day theme, Leveraging Water for Peace, resonates with understanding water dynamics, such as in the Okavango Delta, as it highlights the critical role of water management in fostering cooperation and mitigating potential conflicts among the multiple stakeholders sharing the transboundary river basin, which emphasizes the need for sustainable and collaborative approaches to harnessing water resources for the benefit of all. The presentation will give a background on the Okavango Delta challenges and insights, and finally, conclusion. Now moving on to the background of the study area. The Okavango Delta is an inland delta in the northwestern part of Botswana, covering an estimated area of about 30,000 square kilometers. The delta receives inflow from Angola, which usually cause peak flows during the winter season and considerable rainfall in the summer season. The Okavango Delta forms at the terminus of the Okavango River system, which starts from Angolan highlands and traverses through Namibia, then which makes Angola, Botswana, and Namibia the riparian states hosting the Okavango River basin. These three riparian states established the permanent Okavango River Basin Water Commission, known as OKACO, which is a river basin organization to jointly manage water resources of the Kubango-Okavango River Basin. Cooperation among the riparian states hosting the Okavango River Basin is thus important in upholding peace and ensuring sustainable use of these resources. Some quick facts about the Okavango Delta. It's an inland delta which was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, also a wetland of international importance, declared at the 1997 Ramsar Convention. And on the socio-economic and ecosystem benefits, the Okavango Delta provides the following benefits: tourism, agriculture, and also a habitat to a variety of flora and fauna. Now, moving on to the challenges. The Okavango Delta resources faces several challenges. These are a result of high dependence on the river system by the growing population, the diverse flora and fauna. On the other side, inevitable climate change impacts exacerbate water challenges, where drier future conditions in the Delta have been projected. Pressing water scarcity issues in the region have driven the narrative of considering water abstraction from the river for irrigation, possible damming for hydropower, and diversions for potable water use. And now, should this envisioned human activities come to light, the amount of water usage in the upstream and downstream will change significantly, altering the sustainability of the delta ecosystem and may possibly lead to conflicts over the water resources if not well managed. Now, the objective of my study is as follows. In order to assess the sustainability of the Okavango Delta, this work is aimed at investigating changes of surface water occurrence over time. Moreover, this study also determined the existence of trends and abrupt changes in the surface water resources. This was achieved by using Landsat images from 1989 to 2023 for both the austral summer and winter season. Here, this slide presents a snippet of my results. The first paragraph there shows a hydrograph, which is simply a graph of inundated area over time, which shows over time between 1989 and 2023. This water area was determined from classifying Landsat images into water and non-water areas. The hydrograph shows summer denoted by red dots and winter denoted by blue dots as an aerial extent of surface water in the Okavango Delta. Generally, the winter season showed high inundated area. And then a peak is also observed in the year 2011, where the Delta received abnormal or high inflow. There were no significant trends in the area hydrograph shown in figure 2 there. However, abrupt changes were observed. An abrupt upward change, now shown in the bottom figure there, which is figure 3, was identified in 2009 to 2011, which coincides with the highest peak inflows received within the monitoring period. And then this is later on followed by a gradual decline in flooded area, showing a decline in the inundated parts of the Okavango Delta. And then as for the inflow, the river discharge, now this is the trend. The river discharge is generally declining, implying low inflows into the Delta. And in the future, if the current and planned activities would prevail, the amount of river discharge or water that is deposited into the Okavango Delta will also reduce. Now on to the conclusion there. Efforts in protecting and monitoring wetlands, e.g. the Okavango Delta resources include the inception of wetlands monitoring and assessment, that is WMAST, implemented with the support of the OCACOM, which is the river basin management, managing this catchment. The OCACOM was initiated to advise the 3 member states, being Angola, Botswana, and Namibia, on sustainable development and management of the transboundary water resources of the Kubango-Okavango River Basin. So the points on this slide, they are drawn and inferred from the insights that I've presented earlier. There should be seasonal trade-off in water abstraction, which must be considered following time lags for water to reach the Delta for its sustainability, whilst benefiting local communities both in the upstream and within the deltaic environment. Also, declining surface water in the Okavango Delta is likely to happen due to adverse climate impacts, possible damming for hydropower generation, irrigation, as well as water diversions. As we are aware that Windhoek is also experiencing water challenges, and there have been plans that were suggested or tabled in order to abstract or to divert water from the Okavango river system to supply local communities here in Namibia. So in such a scenario, a dynamically stable ecosystem such as the Okavango Delta will shift from being dynamically stable to being critically stable. This is the end of my presentation, and here are some of the references that are captured in the presentation, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tafila, for that enlightening presentation. Can we all also give him a round of applause virtually, please? He deserves it. So the floor is open now for questions. Like I said, we can't really take so many of them. So if there's anyone who feels they need some clarity or they have additions, comments, or a question for our two presenters, Ms. Maria and Mr. Tafila, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself and then you just speak and ask the question, as they will also unmute themselves and answer. Thank you so much. You're also welcome to write your question in the chat box in case you're having any issues of speaking up. So I'm just going to give a few, maybe 5 minutes or so for the questions.
Okay, let me jump in here. Hi, this is Professor Swatuk. I enjoyed both presentations.
Good afternoon, Prof.
I enjoyed both presentations, but I'd like to hear from each of the presenters how their research can contribute to the theme. How does your work on identifying anomalies or measuring surface flow contribute to cooperation rather than conflict, or how might your information that you gather make for a more peaceful or equitable kind of outcome somewhere? Thank you.
Okay, Maria and Tafila, perhaps you can just unmute one by one, then you can speak to Prof. Larry's question.
Okay, thank you. I'll go first. Yeah, my studies seem to be more technical in terms of quantifying, the surface water dynamics, and this question really, I think from my end, I have also mentioned that there is the OCACOM, the Okavango River Basin Commission, which is responsible for managing the water resources within these three riparian states. So the information that would be generated, or the knowledge that would be generated from my study, will help advise on how water resources, could be equally, or maybe not equally, but equitably used amongst the three riparian states. I have just highlighted, maybe I did not emphasize on the issue of trade-offs, because this water that flows to the Okavango Delta originates from the Angolan highlands. They also need a fair share to use the same resource, but also considering that the Okavango Delta is a wetland of international importance, not just limited to Botswana. It also benefits the three riparian states. If we can identify the patterns, of the surface water dynamics, we are able to know whether the delta would be sustainable in the future due to any other abstractions, because currently the delta is in its pristine state. But once water is abstracted or diverted, this actually have got a detrimental effect on the downstream. So outputs from my research would actually inform such organizations on how to equitably distribute the resources amongst the local communities, both in up and downstream.
Oh, it's Maria here. Just to answer Prof's question, when we are talking about water networks, we are including all the different types of networks, including the smart water metering networks, which is now emerging. Right now, the adoption of these smart water metering networks is quite low due to that there's still skepticism coming from the consumer side. This is according to the research, due to privacy and security issues. So by now trying to research on the anomaly detection techniques will then subsidize this skepticism coming from the consumer side. And currently, the water utilities is suffering from non-revenue water. So they are losing a lot of money through non-revenue water. So what this anomaly detection does is it's automatic and it's near real time, because leakages at the moment, they are being detected by consumers. So whereby I mean to say that consumers are being used as sensors. So by using these anomaly detection techniques, water utilities can therefore be able to also save on non-revenue water because it's near real time. So in the process, it's both making the consumer and the water utilities sort of have peace, because consumers don't want to pay for leakages that they are not on their side. And water utilities also believe that they don't want to account for those leakages. So by bringing out the near real-time anomaly detection techniques, it can save consumers, water utilities, as well as time. I think that's how I understand the question. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for the question, Prof. Larry. Thank you for responding, Tafila and Maria. I see there's another question. You can unmute yourself and speak. I can't really see the name. Is it Dina? Yes. Ms. Dina, you can unmute yourself and then just ask the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Facilitator. Dina Nashpri from the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform. Yes, thank you very much. Is it Peter, the guy that is doing something on the Okavango and the effects of abstraction on the Delta? I just want to find out, you had made the reference to Okacom and how the study can be of beneficiary to the 3 member states. My first question is very simple. Have you made contact with Okacom so that they can enrich the research, or how they can contribute, maybe availing studies that have been done, reports that are available, and also might be giving some kind of information with regards to possible water withdrawal projects that have been muted or mooted in the basin. So I just want to see, how do we come in as member states, me being one of them?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Dina. Tafila and Maria, the floor is yours. Sorry, Tafila.
Yes. I didn't hear the last part. Can just the last sentence, I think, yeah.
My last question is, or the last part of my question, how do we come in as member states, me being one of them, 3 member states, is water for peace? How do we make sure that this water, we use it to develop our country, but at the same time promote cooperation?
Okay. Thank you for that question. Right now, because my study or my talk right now was just focusing on surface water resources, there are also alternatives such as groundwater resources that would really spare, surface water resources that flow downstream to the Okavango Delta. I have also been in contact with one of the scientific officers at OCACOM who have also provided some reports, or provided a report regarding the transboundary aquifer project and modeling. So what happens is that some of these other activities I've highlighted, they are simply hypothetical. They have not yet been implemented, but due to growing demands of water use arising from population growth, and also local communities would want to use the same water resource, I think there should be a regulation to say this possible amount of water could be withdrawn, and also considering that it might not have negative effects on the downstream or within the delta itself. What I've also picked is that the delta shows some high surface water consistencies in the winter season. So observing the time lag of water flow from the upstream to downstream, there could be trade-offs in when to abstract, and then also when to tap on the groundwater resources whilst leaving surface water intact. So I'm not sure if I've addressed your question.
Partially, but we can have a one-on-one. We can have a bilateral discussion outside the webinar.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dina, for your question, and thank you, Tafila, for that answer as well. Do we have any other questions before we proceed? I don't see any questions in the chat box. I don't see any hands that are raised. Okay, so with that, allow me to introduce our keynote speaker for this seminar, Professor Larry Swatuk. So just to give you a quick brief overview or bio about Professor Larry, he is affiliated with the School of Environment, Enterprise and Development at the University of Waterloo in Canada. He teaches a course on global political economy theories of international development and water security. He is also an extraordinary professor in the Institute for Water Studies at the University of Western Cape. Currently, his research is centered on political economy and natural resources, with specific emphasis on freshwater governance and management in the global south. So after Professor Larry completes his presentation, we can have a similar discussion where you can raise your questions or additions in the chat box or by raising your hand before we go to the next agenda on the program. Thank you so much and welcome, Professor Larry.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Do you want to share from that side?
Yes, Prof, I will share my screen from this side.
Okay, and then I'll just say next slide when I'd like you to change the slides, okay?
Can Prof see my screen?
I can, thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, good morning, my side, good afternoon, your side. It's very nice to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's much appreciated. Some of you know I spent many years in different parts of Africa, including 11 years at the University of Botswana, of which 4 was at the Okavango Research Institute. So when someone talks about the Okavango, I get very excited. It's very close to my heart. Yes, and I mean, I'm very excited also to participate with the graduate students because you are all the future. Or maybe you're even the now, some of you, because some of you are seconded from jobs and are getting further studies to improve your pay grade. And as we know, in the context of female PhD students, you know, I have lots of I've trained lots of women PhDs because it's part of earning respect in a male-dominated, you know, male-dominated environment, carrying that PhD. So it has more value than just economic or intellectual, but also we know that it helps bend men toward a more nuanced understanding of who can know what. And I liked very much the first presenter's Women in Science bit in her presentation. So thank you very much for that. So I've pulled this on the first slide. Sorry, go back one slide. No, you're going the wrong way.
Sorry,
No,
Prof.
that's not. That shouldn't be the first slide. Where's the first slide? That's the second slide. That's the third slide. That's the first slide. Thank you. Yeah, I just pulled this graphic, Water for Peace, off of the UN Water website. And and I found it quite interesting. This is the second time I'm speaking to this topic in a group of actually young people. I did this back in February during International Development Week we have here in Canada, where many of the young people had nothing to do with water. They were more interested in social issues, and I find it quite interesting how the topic is framed. So I'm going to partly talk about the framing of these issues. I know what I like about this, and I'm trained as a social scientist, but I've worked in multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary contexts for so many decades now, actually. And I feel like one of the most important things that we can do is we can build kind of creative coalitions across disciplines, across nations, across all the kinds of things that divide us, to try to possibly get to a kind of a conversation around the kind of peace that we want, right? Not any old peace. And I'm gonna make that clear as I go along. So let's go to the second slide. Thank you. I come to you as part of, I'm the vice president of the Environmental Peace Building Association. And you can see here, there's Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was one of the patrons of this organization. And this is a relatively new organization. We have a whole series of interest groups. We have a water interest group. We have an Africa interest group. We have climate change interest groups. We are underpopulated with African members. So I encourage everybody to look at the Environmental Peace Building website, and I think there are special rates for students, and if you're Global South, there's even a different kind of rate. And this organization brings together not just academics, but practitioners, government, people from government, people from intergovernmental organizations, all types of people who believe that cooperating on environmental issues is somehow a pathway to a broader social peace. I've been working at this for many years, and this has coalesced into this really interesting organization. I encourage you to have a look at it. Next slide, please. And in relation to my own work, so the Environmental Peace Building Association actually grew out of this book on the left, Environmental Peacemaking, that was edited by my colleagues Ken Conca and Jeff DeBelco. I actually have a chapter in there about the water war, quotation marks, between Namibia and Botswana over Sududu Island. And some of you are too young to even remember that, back in the 1990s, how it actually went to the International Court of Justice and things like that. So you might be interested in that chapter. But more interesting is the idea that this was a mid-1990s idea that some scholars had, that maybe in the post-Cold War era, we could build a more peaceful and just planet through functional kinds of collaboration involving water or forests or wetlands or all different kinds of natural resources, or rebuilding after conflict, focusing on water. On the right-hand side is the cover of my training manual. I haven't done one since the pandemic started, but I also do a lot of real-time conflict resolution training on negotiation and conflict resolution for integrated water resources management. I've done lots of trainings around Africa, but also in Central Asia and Latin America, with this idea that you can pursue peaceful outcomes, collaborative outcomes. You can turn conflict into cooperation. And I think this is a very important point for us here, because when we think about water for peace, we have to recognize that we always fight over water. But we also collaborate over water for very specific reasons. So we're never going to eliminate conflict, because conflict is often healthy. Conflict can oftentimes lead to resolutions. If you think of fights you have inside your own families, for example, you might have some big argument, but this will lead to a resolution and everybody's better off at the end of the day. So conflict and cooperation is not a scale from, this side or that side, but it's actually a kind of an interlinked, moving kind of organic context as situations change and so on. Now, what links those two projects together is my own thinking about strategies for peacemaking and conflict resolution, but that also infuse the wider environmental peace building community. And I just put 4 key bullet points here. One is that in environmental peace building, that we can attempt to change the strategic discourse. And most of us know that when we talk about water for peace, it tends, like the peace and conflict narrative has been colonized by high political actors, and understandably in some ways, right? I mean, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the conflict in the Middle East, ongoing conflicts across Ethiopia, Sudan, other parts of the world, so it's understandable that violent conflict and the language around peace and conflict is often taken over by high political actors, and we argue that that this isn't always a good thing, right? That especially in the context of water is often highly local, right? If you look at hydrographs across the continent, it's very diverse. It's not one thing, so why should we, when we start using the language of peace and conflict, why should we always get out of the way for state level decision makers? And I'm not so sure that's the right thing. So how do you change the strategic discourse? How do you reconceptualize peace? How do you reconceptualize conflict and so on? Partly you can do this by fostering inclusive sensibilities founded on new geographies of social interaction. And my colleague Tafila talked about the OCACOM, right? And we all know that river basin organizations are an attempt to try to figure out how to change our not just how to bring together the appropriate social actors or socioeconomic or or bring the right people together in a appropriate socio-ecological context that can speak to, let's say, water security at a level that doesn't involve Luanda, Windhoek, and Gaborone talking about the Okavango, right? You know, those people are far, far away from the lived reality of these sorts of things. So, you know, new sensibilities, new geographies helps us think about this. Building creative coalitions, I feel. I stole this idea from my wife. She's an urban planner. And she works in high density suburbs around the world, or high density settlements around the world, slums and so on. And her vision is that you know, especially in this context, like I'm in Waterloo, Canada at the moment. Most of you are in Namibia. We have technologies now that can draw us all together, and so we can find like-minded actors to come together in common cause. And also, you know, inside places where sometimes, you know, in the development practice world, scholars of international development are very critical of places like the World Bank. You know, but there are people, good people inside the World Bank. You know, I have many friends who, I have my own former students who I've trained who now work in the World Bank. So, you know, so you can find, you know, you can build a creative coalition around some kind of shared vision that can carry these activities forward. And of course, there's the operational side of things. And what I liked about the answers from both Maria and Tafila is that, you know, these are kinds of there's a demonstration here of where, you know, you are collecting data, you are creating new knowledge that helps to offset suspicion, it helps change perceptions, it helps improve decision making, but it also, you know, in especially in Maria's case, it talks about saving money, you know, so you show benefits, and if you show benefits, you can build trust among consumers and service providers. So the idea of environmental peace building or water for peace, a lot of it turns on how we talk about things, how we conceptualize the particular geography that we're talking about, who's involved, and also what we do, right? So there's, you know, what is it? Are there functional kinds of things that we can do in order to help us move toward cooperation, collaboration, trust, and so on, and away from unhelpful kinds of conflicts. Next slide, please. I just pulled this out to give us some context about about, you know, where there is, you know, because I asked myself, like, what is peace? You know, I often ask myself, whose peace? You know, if two states aren't fighting, does that mean that there's peace? I'm not so sure. But there are organizations out there in the world who are trying to quantify the status of peace in the world, and the Global Peace Index. This is the 2023 Global Peace Index, shot from one of the inside pages of that. As you can see quite quickly here, it articulates peace at a national level, at a sovereign state level. And you can see what they say here on this first slide. The greenest is the most peaceful, and the reddest is the least peaceful. And you can see here that, you know, they're saying given their various measures related to peace, we could talk about that. Canada is extremely peaceful, whereas the United States is and Brazil and a few other Latin American countries are somewhere in between, you know, low and medium conditions of peace. What does that mean? Does that mean everywhere across the United States, everywhere across Canada? But anyway, but it's a kind of it's meant to be a kind of a snapshot to give you a context to think about the conditions that exist where you are. Next slide. And then this is the rest of the world. So if you see the North America or the Western Hemisphere, well, the other side of the world, you know, what you need to worry about is the reddest bits on the picture here, and you can see how Botswana and Namibia and Zambia are very nice and green. So if there's peace, what is there? Does that mean everybody is fine? Is everybody well off? So so if there's the presence of peace, is there the absence of other social stressors? So people are presenting your country, my country, in a way that it sets a tone for thinking about decision making related to things like resource management in the context of peace building, and so on. And we need to engage with this sort of thing. Next slide. So I asked myself, what is peace? This is a picture of me with one of my colleagues here at the University of Waterloo, where we did a joint presentation about water for peace about in the early February. And I thought I would just throw two ideas out there, that there's negative peace and positive peace. So peace in relation to what we saw in the two graphics on the previous slides is largely negative peace. It's the absence of conflict, or the absence of violent conflict. That there are no, and they measure things like ongoing civil wars, ongoing interstate wars, military spending, police brutality, all these kinds of measures that I'm not so sure that of course they illustrate the context within which people exist, right? I mean, it's much harder to go about your day in places like present day Haiti, where there is this ongoing gang violence, than it is in different parts of Canada where I am, or across Windhoek where most of you are. So the absence of violent conflict is important, no doubt. But what is it? Does it constitute the presence of what? Of tolerance, or is it, as opposed to solidarity? I think many of us in the development studies world, in environmental studies, social ecology, we're always thinking about justice, and we're thinking about about solidarities, about how you can build broader trust, draw on social capital across society, and make everybody better off, and maybe even like each other. But mostly when we're talking about peace, we're not actually talking so much about whether you need to like me or not. It's like institutional arrangements that minimize the chance for violent conflict between states or within states, that minimize the chance for you leaving the university today and somebody stealing your handbag or your laptop. These don't require us to even know each other, never mind like each other. These are kind of institutional arrangements that are designed to try to limit the context of, to limit the opportunities for some kind of conflict, which I would say stands in contrast to what is described as positive peace. Positive peace is what I understand as the presence of an enabling environment to facilitate durable, equitable, and a just peace. And it's similar a little bit to the idea of development as freedom. That we need to be free from fear, we need to be free from want, but there needs to be enablers to help us realize those opportunities. And I see them as like reducing poverty, in the present, because if there's no violent conflict, but there's large scale poverty, is that not also a kind of violence? We would call that a kind of structural violence, where poor people are differently positioned in the social context that limits their abilities to realize, their capacities in life. So I think of a positive piece, and we can think of the way water can come into this picture through this lens of a positive piece of creating an enabling environment through reducing poverty through job creation. So I'm going to talk a bit about that in a few minutes. Maybe economic redistribution. So people pay taxes, and this goes to services, and then and improve social services. And as Tafila was telling us earlier, you know, that if you have these kinds of technologies that assist with reducing you know, unaccounted for water losses or you know, whatever anomalies there are, you know, those kinds of things are and can be built into service provider systems that can then make people better off, right? So I think that there's a kind of a functional side to positive peace, that we're looking for, you know, action that can result in desirable outcomes, not just for a limited section of a society, but for everybody. Next slide, please. And of course, this leads to justice. Oh, and I forgot to say, I'm just throwing some photos in here that I want you to think about in terms of water for peace. You know, like how do the pictures I'm showing here, you know, how do they relate to water for peace? And maybe they can stimulate some conversations. This picture actually is in the Boteti River, well, obviously after it has receded, and there's a hand dug well in the middle of the river there, and you can see that there's, well, it's not a very clear picture, but you know, aside from human beings who also use this groundwater, this shallow groundwater, you've got livestock, larger and smaller livestock, but those are also zebra in the background. So you've got wildlife and so on. So when we're thinking about water for peace, we can't forget the environment, right? We can't forget nature. We can't forget the different kinds of, you know, the health of an ecosystem as we're talking about this. Peace and justice, though, like, you know, I feel like what is often left out of the conversations about peace and peacemaking and peace building is a focus on justice, right? That you know, and you might ask, why justice, or what kind of justice, right? So there's a famous liberal philosopher, political philosopher named John Rawls, who talked about justice as fairness. That, you know, how would you act in how would you act if in your own best interest, knowing that someone else, you know, how would you like someone else to act in the context of not wanting to be restricted in your own capacity to act, right? So it's a kind of, you know, we talk about justice is blind, how we should set a system out somehow where everything is fair. Are we talking about equity, which means everybody is equal, or equality of opportunity, which means that, well, you know, we recognize that there are inequalities in society, but everybody should have an opportunity to change. You know, so somehow when we're thinking about water for peace, you know, we should be thinking about the entry points for justice as well, you know, for, you know, making everybody better off, as opposed to a particular cohort within society. Next slide, please. And then, of course, you know, what would then, you know, we have ideas, we make attempts, but but are there guarantees for a durability of a just peace? Like what actually can lead to these kinds of outcomes? Obviously, we need appropriate institutional arrangements. If we're talking about transboundary water, well, OCOCOM is a particular kind of institutional arrangement that is designed to ensure a kind of socio-ecological health and well-being, you know, of the environment, of people, and so on. But for me, it you know, the institutional arrangement is only one half of the equation. The other half of the equation is actual performance, right? So you know, you've set these, you've created these entities that are designed to to achieve particular goals. But as many of you know, we have so many wonderful organizations and institutions and laws and policies, and performance is always, not always, but performance is too often lacking. And and if you're going to build a wider piece, a durable piece, a just piece, there has to be this direct connection between the institutional arrangement and the performance. And you can reduce it to, let's say, do people want to pay? Do citizens want to pay for water? All those studies that have been done across, back in the late 90s and early 2000s around willingness to pay across SADC countries, showed that people are more than happy to pay for service, but they want to pay for a service that's dependable, that provides water when they need it of a quality and quantity that is necessary for their needs. They don't want to pay for a resource that comes, like the poor people in Johannesburg right now who are suffering from the water energy nexus over there. So if you can, even at that lower level, if you can bring in Tafila's data gathering around anomalies, improve the ability to deliver the water, then the institutional arrangement will gain respect through performance, right? And the same thing, and you can scale it up. So if you go up to river basin level, OCOCOM, or if you go up to regional level, SADC, or you go up to African Union level, or if you go up to global level, right? So the institutional arrangements, are necessary, but performance is more important. Next slide. Now let's just switch. I've been touching on water, but I want to talk about water specifically now for the next 3 or 4 minutes. Water in peace and conflict. This is Mark Twain. Mark Twain is famous for saying whiskey is for drinking, but water is for fighting over. And I like this quotation because the fact is that we always, we fight over water because it's necessary, right? As Professor Hoop Savenay, one of our most beloved Dutch professors related to WaterNet and SADC water, Hoop says water is not an ordinary good, right? That that it's bulky, that it's non-substitutable, that we live near it, and we have different interests in it. So of course we're always going to fight over it. There's always going to be conflicts around it because it is so important. And I fear that we see conflict as always a negative thing, and peace is always a positive thing. But there are cases where we might have peace, the absence of conflict, right? But this hides great inequalities that around access, around use, and so on. Whereas conflict may be a necessary precursor to addressing that element. And as some of you have been maybe watching the news and you see French farmers are busy protesting and shutting down highways, and that social action, social movements, that protest has always been an important part of democratic struggle for better kinds of social outcomes. Next slide. So why fight? What do we fight about water for? Well, we fight over what need, right? So the need for water, its access and use. We know the statistics about how many people lack access to potable water for their everyday needs, despite living in places where there's plenty of water, and also the different kinds of use profiles where we have different, each of us has a different kind of need for water. So those are kind of basic primordial conflicts. But we fight over other things as well. Even when we have enough water, we then may fight over values, right? I mean, I think many of the problems that we have today across the world in terms of populism relate to the fact that in a lot of countries, like the United States, for example, where people have their basic needs satisfied, they turn to other kinds of conflictual areas, such as values and ideologies about how you should live your life and so on. So we often fight about the value of water. You know, I mean, water is too often characterized as just a commodity. Either it's as a use, right? So it's use value, direct consumption, you know, in the household and industry and agriculture, but also non-use value in terms of you know, parks and tourism and things like that. But water, other kinds of water values, you know, water in, you know, the cosmologies. Where's water in our cosmologies? Where's water in our spirituality? How do we think about water? I mean, oftentimes right now, I have a graduate student who's working on wetlands, you know, because wetlands are under threat everywhere, as you probably know. There's a trend toward wetland, you know, wetland offsetting, right? So it's this kind of like, okay, we're going to build here, but this company will then rehabilitate or create a wetland somewhere else, or will pay to preserve a wetland somewhere else. And but you know, that strictly economic kind of offsetting understanding, where does that leave the group who maybe lived around that wetland and viewed it as as part of a central element in their understanding of their place on the planet, in their cosmology, in their spirituality? So we fight over needs for water, we fight over values, we fight over ideologies that are often served by water, right? So state power, industrial power, social power. We know that water is power. We know that the ability to capture water, the hydraulic mission, some of you know about these concepts. You know, water has served state power, and this is an image that should. This is the Kasombo Dam in Ghana, that symbolizes the capacity of governing elites to deliver, on social needs and for electricity, for water supply, and so on. So we fight, over all of these kinds of things. Okay, next slide. I think this is my second last slide. And then what do the conflicts look like? Well, conflicts, happen at different scales. They happen across and between sectors, right? So I hope that this will generate some comment and questions among you. This is not meant to be comprehensive. It's meant to be more like to try to stimulate a conversation around this. So in terms of scale, well, stream level are very common. Intercommunal, some of you probably, if you work in the social development side of the natural resources, you know that communities are always fighting over something related to either blue water, surface water, or accessible groundwater, or green water. They're fighting over land. They're fighting over the ability, rain-fed spaces and so on. Too often, we focus on the international. I'm going to say something about that in a second. It's all part of this sort of water for peace. Oh, peace is something that is guaranteed by the sovereign states, and they do it through these kinds of structures of diplomacy and military and policing and so on. And so they hog that space, right? The international, and we're obsessed with the international. I have a book I love here. This is Vandana Shiva. I'm just showing it on the slide here. You can see it says Water Wars. It's an old book. It's 23 years old now. But Vandana Shiva wrote this book as a contrast to what we're always talking about water wars, interstate stuff, Egypt, Ethiopia, etc. What if Angola dams upstream, and all that kind of stuff, right? But Vandana Shiva focuses on the real wars, she says, of water are wars of the loss of land, right? So the ability to to access the necessary rain, to have land adequate for sustainable livelihoods through rain-fed agriculture, or maybe access to streams that you used to have, but also, you know, wars against the poor who just don't have drinking water, you know, sanitation and so on. So, you know, so I think, you know, we focus on the international at the cost of turning away from what are often intrastate conflicts that are class oriented or ethnic oriented, and so on. And then of course we conflict over sectors, right? So industry, mining, big agriculture, urban, rural, tourism. So there's always these kinds of challenges out there. I heard Tafila talk about trade-offs, you know, that the design is that, you know, some of these things David Gray and Claudia Sadoff 25 years ago wrote about benefit sharing and how you try to, you know, conceptualize around, you know, what is it that you really need? You know, are you worried about not having enough water, or do you need enough water to generate electricity or to, you know, have safety for dry season urban water supply? You know, what are those kinds of questions? So we fight around those things. So let me just go back to the international for a second. Next slide. Right, and this is a, you know, very popular image of all the transboundary river basins around the world. I should have also put in transboundary groundwater basin too, but this gives you a sense that, you know, like more than 60% of the entire planet is, you know, more than 60% of the planet's people live in a transboundary basin. And that many of these basins actually, there are no agreements on the sharing of these waters. So there's all these kinds of fears around, you know, that we're going to fight over these things. Next slide. You know, this is a close-up of the, you know, I think this needs to be updated because it's also 25 years old. But it's just indicative of the context, how we've organized ourselves into sovereign states, which cut across in straight lines. You know, there's a very interesting story about how Namibia ended up with the Panhandle. I don't know if you know that story. I could tell you that story later, or maybe somebody there can relate it to you. You know, that these funny straight lines that the colonizers made when they carved up Africa, you know, or using rivers as boundaries as well, right? So the natural socials, you know, and the pre-colonial spaces, of course, didn't look like this, and you know, populations were more mobile. They moved with water. You know, there was a whole other way of organizing social space prior to the creation of sovereign states, and yet we're stuck with sovereign states and their boundaries and their ideas about you know, their right to do whatever they want to do. As Namibia often tells Botswana, you know, make no mistake, we have a right to the water of the Okavango. You know, it's that kind of discourse that becomes problematic, and it's part of the whole IWRM and basin-oriented approach that is embedded in SDG 6 under SDG 6.5, where we're, you know, trying to think about how could we manage a resource sustainably if we looked at it spatially in a different way. All right, next slide. I think it's my last slide, second last slide. Right, so water as a peacemaker, builder, and keeper. Well, you know, why do we believe that? You know, why do I believe? Like, I've been doing this for a long time. I believe it. It's almost like a religion. You know, when I teach my courses in IWRM at University of Western Cape, I often start off by like a preacher saying, "I believe." You know, do you believe in IWRM? I believe in IWRM. I believe in water for peace. I actually believe in the functional, in the ability to collaborate around functional things to the wider benefit of society. And I think the wider world believes this too, for two related reasons. You know, as Prof Follow said earlier, you know, water is life. Yeah, so we have to, we can't live without it, right? But also water is death. I mean, look at this picture here. You know, I mean, this is a badly polluted river in India. So so that water is necessary and non-substitutable, but it also can kill us. If that should bring us together around a common agenda. You know, what would that agenda look like? Well, you know, that agenda in the peacemaking and peace building world revolves around functional collaboration. And if it's about benefit sharing, if you take the Nile Basin Initiative, for example, you know, these are always around hydroelectric dams or multi-purpose dams that satisfy, you know, different countries' needs for stable water supply to be held back, but also, you know, timing, you know, flood mitigation, and also to turn turbines so that people can have electricity. So there's all these ideas around, you know, how we can work together, try to build trust, how to get past you know, the kinds of suspicions and perceptions that limit collaboration and cooperation, that encourage conflict, through some kind of actually doing, you know, a kind of a functional approach to the utility of water, whether it's rehabilitating a wetland, or it's building a dam or a pipeline, or it's focused on improved rain-fed agriculture, right? So, you know, so water is everywhere. And so, you know, I mean, you know, pick a problem and dive in. You know, I think you can make it peace and enhance secure personal and communal security through all kinds of avenues, two of which our students have already talked about here. Okay, last slide. Right, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your invaluable contributions, Prof. Larry. It was really interesting. I actually enjoyed the presentation. If we have any questions, you can write it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand. I see there's a question already in the chat box, Prof. Larry, from Prof. I'll follow. What constitute tolerance in the face of potential situations that can threaten peace? Example, the damming of Nile River by Ethiopia involving Sudan and Egypt. Hence, how can tolerance be maintained or promoted in order to leverage peace?
Okay, thanks. You know, I find this so funny, you know, that, you know, and when I talk about, you know, my second slide was about changing the strategic discourse. That you know, because I teach a course in water and security, and my course is part of, it's cross-listed with the Peace and Conflict Studies Master's Program at a college across the way from this building. Whenever the Peace and Conflict Studies students come into this course, they all want to write about the Nile River. Everybody, always, right? And you know, part of the challenge with the Nile is perception, right? That you know, people keep buying into this idea that somehow this is a conflict-prone entity. I encourage everybody to look at the Nile Basin Initiative. Look at this interstate collaboration, including NGOs, functional practices, peace building. I did a conflict resolution training in the Nile, you know, many years ago, that involved everybody except Eritrea. It was so, you know, it was engineers from Egypt to Ethiopia, you know, so there are so many positive things, and yet we get distracted by, you know, what makes news, right? And you know, and I'm here to say that there's that water wars between Ethiopia and Egypt are highly unlikely. First of all, Egypt is a complete political mess. They can't even get their own house in order, and Ethiopia isn't that much better at the moment. There's a huge research that shows the collaboration across around the GERD, right, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, involving Egyptian water engineers and senior government ministers, right, who collaborate. You know, of course, they posture and they say things, but this is all part of the conflict and collaboration continuum that's always there. I mean, most of this posturing is for local consumption. You know, the GERD Dam is far more logical than the Aswan High Dam, which you know, my colleague Peter van der Zag once described to me as the world's largest evaporation pond. You know, 5 cubic kilometers of water just simply evaporates every year out of that Aswan High Dam. You know, so, and the dam is not going anywhere because of you know, political reasons and so on. You know, so there's lots of collaboration. And it doesn't mean that Ethiopians and Egyptians have to like each other. I was once at you know, in Virginia, hosted by the U.S. U.S. Army Africa High Command, brought together you know, kind of a water wars you know, thing, Africa and water wars, where at this conference, the Ethiopian and the Egyptian ministers of water were on a stage together, and their chairs were sat facing away from each other. So they sat with their backs toward each other. They wouldn't even look at each other. And they made all this posturing stuff, you know, and it was very unhelpful. But at the lower level of actual planning, management, you know, professional hydrologists, there's lots of collaboration, and so I think, you know, we need to remember that. Where does tolerance come in? It doesn't mean anybody has to like anybody, right? You know, it doesn't mean that Egyptians and Ethiopians have to, you know, become brothers. It doesn't mean that. It just simply means that you have to be able to, you know, to alter the strategic discourse in a way that shows, because part of peace building is around transparency. It's about information gathering, it's information sharing. You know, it's open channels of communication, collaboration. It's data. You know, one of the things I like about the SASSCAL graduate program is the fact that you know, you've got science, you know, these are, I mean, I heard a mix of sort of social and physical and natural sciences, right? Where you have to bring different groups together to be able to articulate clearly what is the adequate knowledge for decision making. So, you know, and I feel like, you know, the Nile Basin Initiative activities and annual conferences and quarterly meetings, and they're all online and they're all open to the general public. And I encourage everybody here to, you know, to watch out for that. Go on, you know, join NBI Facebook group or Instagram or X or whatever, wherever you can find them, or go on the, you know, contact somebody you know who works in the NBI and become part of that. And then you can disabuse yourself of all of these things that you find in the popular press that are encouraged by decision makers because of their struggles at the national level, right? I mean, it's for domestic consumption, right? To saber rattle is for domestic consumption. It has nothing to do with whether these countries are going to go to war with each other or not. It completely misrepresents what is actually going on. All right. So again, but then to emphasize, it's the institutional frameworks that matter, and that it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily be friends with your counterpart across the, you know, I mean, if you take it closer to home, what I found when I was, you know, I left Botswana in 2008, you know, and I'd worked, you know, I'd been part of the OCACOM stuff, what I found very interesting was you would that the technical representatives inside of OCACOM were often the same people that were the technical representatives inside Kuvalai, for example, right? And these folks had very powerful opinions about their counterparts, right? So the Angolans, had very powerful opinions about the Namibians and the Botswana. And the Botswana had very powerful opinions about the others at a personal level, actually, right? But that didn't get in the way of kind of a professional discussions and collaboration. So again, it's about tolerance. I don't like the term tolerance, but when we can't get around the central importance of institutionalized collaboration. There's no way around it. We live in social groups. We have rules and procedures that are necessary to organize ourselves. So the institution matters, and the performance matters. And if you don't personalize the institution, let's take Putin and Donald Trump. These people have personalized their role. They've tried to turn their party into a personal thing. They've tried to turn their state into a personal thing. This is exactly the wrong thing to do. You want to keep the personal out and get the organizational and institutional right, and and in such a way that you can enhance performance, which can then build trust, build willingness, enhance legitimacy, build the recognition of authority as it's laid out in at whatever scale. And that, again, doesn't mean that you even have to know your neighbor, but you can all agree that this is the right thing to do because there are co-benefits being derived from this. Okay.
Thank you so much, Prof. Larry, for that answer. I'm sure Prof. Alfolo is really satisfied with the answer. So before I give a go-ahead to Dr. Matruas, Ms. Shirley, Ms. Dina, we have a poll currently running now. We just need to know what the audience thinks about the seminar and what your comments are. So please feel free to complete just those few questions on the poll. Dr. Matruas, you can go ahead and ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Swatuk. Good to see you again.
Hi, Anna. Nice to see you.
Yes, thank you so much. That was a really great presentation, I must say. So there are so many things I can also maybe ask you to talk about and so on, but it was fantastic. Of course, we share the same passion about some of these issues. You started off with the women involvement and so on, which is fantastic, given the fact that it is very appropriate and it is International Women's Month. So that was a good one, but also just to encourage the female students to really persevere and take it all the way through. Mine is specifically on the issues that you spoke about around the willingness to pay and so forth. And I wanted to maybe just touch upon some of your experiences when it comes to enforcement mechanisms, because today we're talking about leveraging water for peace, right? And we're looking at some of these areas, and as we all know on this platform, water is quite a special commodity. I mean, in that sense that you can't necessarily just, even if willingness to pay is quite high, given if we get the value for our money, basically what you said, people want to have value for their money at the end of the day. But then we all know the intricacies around the political sphere of water, so to speak. So I wanted to maybe just touch a little bit on enforcement mechanisms. We've been recently involved in developing the what is it, Dina? What is it that we developed now again? It was the guidelines or the around the water tariff policy. I forgot. What was it?
Are you asking what you actually developed, Anna? Because I want to.
The pricing policy, Anna.
Yes, the pricing policy and the guidelines, but it's not guidelines. It's called something else in the legal term. What is it called? That's what I mean. But Prof, you get the point. So, and in that one, it was quite interesting to look at some of these enforcement mechanisms. So if we are not paying, then what exactly, where does that leave us basically? So that is the question that I wanted to pose to you. But otherwise, thank you so much for a really, really insightful presentation. I hope we get that at some point as well.
Okay, thanks. And let me take the other questions and I'll answer them as a group, okay?
Okay, I think Ms. Shirley, you can go ahead, and then Ms. Dina, and then Prof can answer them as a group like Prof said now.
Good afternoon, Prof. This is Shirley Bethune. I'm a lecturer at NUST as well and former member of OCACOM for many years, and we used to work with the Department of Water Affairs in Namibia. I very much agree with you about the cooperation and the collaborative value of water in getting us to work together, and I've always felt that way. And I think that a starting point that I've been encouraged by over the years is that having a recognition of the water environment, basically the water ecology on which all of this is based, and keeping our wetlands and our water resources healthy. That's the bottom line, and that's a level at which we can bring people together to care. I've seen that very much, that sort of collaboration happening among the technical people within these commissions and the technical people at local level and technical people in river basin management committees. And it's at that level where I see the value of working together and then together influencing the decision makers, but coming from a technical point of view where we can explain why and what. And I saw an amazing example in Botswana in the 80s, or even in the 90s, when they're starting to look at declaring the Okavango as a Ramsar site, and that collaboration between 11 ministries to come up with a plan for the Okavango Delta. And I see that as a message that Botswana can have for the rest of the world, something that we can follow. You were probably there at the time, and maybe you'd like to comment on that activity, because I still think that level of collaboration and the understanding and the essence of what the Okavango Delta is, its biodiversity, its role in tourism, the value of the water, and keeping it healthy and being a downstream user rather accelerates that sort of thing. Perhaps you could comment on that and maybe give some message to my students who are doing a course in integrated wetlands and water resources management, and many of them are listening now.
Great, thanks for that, Shirley. I'll take Dina's question, and then I'll answer the three, and then that'll probably bring me to my time.
Yes, thanks, Prof, for that very wonderful presentation. My question is not as detailed as that from Dr. Matros or Shirley, but mine just to say water for peace is a very powerful thing. But how do we build capacity to ensure that water is not only for peace, but goes beyond peace, like fostering cooperation beyond just talking, developing strategy and agreements, but actually moving into development of joint projects for the benefits of the different riparian states, and also moving away from negotiating with emotions, where we are all looking within our niches, with looking at our own interests, but rather than looking at how can we develop these resources while maintaining the environment for the benefit of the wider community.
Okay, thanks for that. I see Rennie's also here, so I guess that's the last question. Rennie.
Thank you so much, Professor Larry Swatuk, for a wonderful presentation. It just took me back when I was doing my master's class. And for those that were not around back then, my water and security class, I was one of the most nervous in that class. But interesting how one of the key lessons that I took away back then was how water can actually then foster cooperation, contrary to at that time it was trending to talk about water wars. And very early in the conversation, Professor Larry Swatuk was, but on the contrary, indications seem to be pointing otherwise. But when I now had opportunity to work with a few transboundary river basin organizations, I also then reflected on how I've always questioned, for example, for OCACOM, and I stand to be guided. I'm glad that Ndina and them are also around. They can speak based on experience. To what extent the conversation around economic integration has also probably motivated environmental policy reforms. In that conversation, motivating for cooperation beyond just looking at water as a resource, but the benefits, the shared benefits that can be accrued from it. So I walked into that class very fixated on water wars. I thought I was being the clever one until that conversation ensued. And yes, maybe it's just a comment rather than a question, but just an observation of how that is panned out when you now look at some of the factors that probably have influenced cooperation instead of more leaning more towards issues of conflict and contestation. So maybe it's just a comment rather than a question. Thank you so much for this conversation in a timely manner, and thank you SGSP and our DRIP colleagues, as well as Prof Larry Swatuk, for making time to have this conversation with us. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rennie. You're taking me. I've been teaching that water and security course at UWC every year since 2001, when that program, that IWRM program, was created. And just a note, I've been doing it pro bono since 2008. So yeah, I mean, this is paying it forward in some ways. But thanks for taking me back to your cohort, Rennie. That's back in the old days when I could force you to read 100 papers in 3 weeks, and that was the good old days when everybody read. And that's a message to all the PhD students here. This is your one chance in your life to fill your head, so you must read. And because once you get out into the working world, things are going to change dramatically. So I'll go back to the start with Anna, and I'll come forward. The willingness to pay. Well, I mean, it comes down to delivery, doesn't it? And I think of South Africa through my NGO work with W12 Plus in South Africa. Part of the problem is that it's not so much not paying as the reasons why people are not paying, right? And they're not paying because there's no performance, right? That the systems of delivery are just not there. In fact, they're being degraded, right? I mean, all the energy problems that South Africa is facing has badly impacted the capacity to deliver water, and so they're actually going backwards. They're being delegitimized, and the authority is being, that authority is being eroded, and water piracy is increasing, so it's going in the opposite direction, and I feel like, this is not a water specific. This is a broader social challenge rather than a water specific challenge, whereas water is the symptom. The unwillingness to pay is a symptom of the broader context, and so so if you try to ring fence it as a water specific challenge, I think that's not going to yield any positive outcomes. And of course, the worst part of this is that many, especially in urban areas, like many municipal governments who are cash strapped and so on, have just turned over delivery to NGOs, water kiosks and all that sort of stuff. So it's almost an acknowledgement that the state, does not have the interest, not just the capacity, but doesn't have the interest in improving services. That it puts it onto the citizen or it comes in with these harebrained ideas where top-down decision making, where you don't work with the local people and they don't buy it. They just don't want to be part of it. So so I would say like the not paying is not about the water per se, but it's where water is the cause. I say it's rather the symptom of a broader social challenge. Now, what to do about that? I think we don't have time to have that broader conversation, Anna, but maybe we can make at next year's WaterNet, we can have a special session around revisiting willingness to pay in light of the challenges that have been going on. I think that would be really useful. Shirley, thanks so much, Shirley. We might have met in the past. I used to go spend lots of time with Pete Haynes in his office, and I still spend time with Pete because his stories, no one can tell a story like Pete Haynes can tell a story. And I like very much your focus on ecology. Some years back, I was at the Zambezi Basin Stakeholder Forum, which was being held in Malawi at that time, I think it was, where there was this whole it was midway through, I think it was midway through the WEF Nexus kind of rollout, right? The water, energy, food, this kind of integrated approach to thinking about resource use, where, in fact, in my own presentation, I said, you're forgetting the most important E. You're forgetting the water, energy, food ecosystems, right? That the foundation for all of this stuff is a healthy ecosystem. And I feel like, again, this speaks to this how you enter a discourse, how you frame, how you frame value. I mean, wetlands have been captured by I have a PhD student who graduated a few years ago. She's all about ecosystems valuation, and so that kind of the commodification of the wetland is it's overly dominated, and I think we lose the broader the maybe across society, I don't know, but we need to have that conversation about what are these broader values, and how do you and how might you participate with that? You have this integrated wetlands graduate students, but how about youth engagement? I mean, I always come back to schools. I feel like schools are the place for. 2 years ago at the WaterNet in Sun City, there was a whole bunch of school children that came from Northwest province in South Africa, and it was so encouraging. And I've stayed in touch with some of those students over time because I encouraged them to develop a kind of Wednesdays for water and to all that stuff. Even though they have rudimentary understandings, they've got energy and engagement, and maybe there's a way to that the SASSCAL grad programs could enter into the schools to have this to build this idea about ecosystem health and wetlands and the value and so on. That might be fertile ground. In relation to the Ramsar site, this I find very interesting because that decision, and I was there, and I had lots of conversations about this, and I published some papers about these things actually, where this was a completely strategic decision made by the government of Botswana to try to actually put them at the high ground rather than the tail end of the river system. And what I mean is, they unilaterally chose to have this Ramsar designation to offset, to give a kind of a global governance framework where they could challenge any kind of Angolan upstream planning and Namibian upstream planning related to offtakes and dams and so on. So it was, and in the late 90s, this was very contentious. And there was a lot of people in your old office there that were very unhappy about how the government of Botswana had gone about that. So they did it first. And now, of course, it's kind of like GERD, like the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Ethiopia went ahead, ahead without consulting anybody else. But at the end of the day, this is, as a reality, these things have helped change the strategic discourse that goes on about. So it's actually, it's encouraged collective thinking, information sharing, maybe not to everybody's satisfaction, but it's changed the context within which you can talk about how resources get used. And then just to add to that, so following on from the Ramsar, when we were doing because Ori, where I was, we were the head, we were the lead for the Okavango Delta strategic plan. And so we always had these meetings with different government departments and so on. So that coalition that came together, that was able to create the Ramsar designation, in trying to develop a strategic plan for the Okavango Delta, they were off in 50 different directions. They became sectoralized again. And it was very funny to be in some of these meetings where, you were supposed to present your plan for, if you're the Department of Housing, or if you're the Department of Agriculture, what is your vision for the Okavango Delta? And the Department of Agriculture had said, well, our vision is that, we have farms, all through the Delta, and the housing, we have a vision that we have houses, So they were taking these kind of strategic positions, that were like completely unreasonable, because they were afraid to lose out to tourism, for example, with those actors that have a natural alliance with the Ramsar Convention. So collective action against the neighboring states, but internally completely riven, and really haven't made much headway in 20 years around that thing. Which leads me then to Ndini, negotiating with emotions. This is really at the heart of conflict resolution and negotiation. If you're looking at alternative approaches to alternative dispute resolution, one of the first things you try to get parties to a conflict to try to do is what we call peel the onion. Like there's a position you take on the outside which says that you are going to do this, which you may or may not be wedded to, but it's a kind of a stand that you've taken because you feel threatened. But outside of that position, there's a kind of inside there are interests that you have, and this is where the benefit sharing that was mentioned a little bit by Rennie, that the ideas around benefit sharing cropped up because in many cases when we're talking about especially transboundary contexts, or it doesn't have to be interstate, but it could be like inside of India, for example, along the Kaveri River. You've got different Indian states that are at loggerheads with each other. So they might frame it as we need X amount of water. and the downstream state will say we need Y amount of water, and these may not be compatible. But what you then try to do is to get into the interest, get them to articulate, well, why do you need that water? For what? You know, what are the different ways that you want to utilize that water? And then at the core of the onion, you know, to peel it right back, you get to the needs. You know, like, what must you have? Right? What is non-negotiable at the end of the day? What do you fear most? And if you can articulate those things, and a good negotiator goes among the different parties and is able to try to build this kind of understanding, so you can find a way to get past the emotional position and to see if there are interests that can help bring groups together. So you know, that's a really useful strategy, and it works inside the household too. So if you're fighting with your kids or your brother or your sister, you know, you can also peel the onion there to try to get to conflict resolution. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, Prof. Larry. I believe we can all agree that we have learned a thing or two from Prof today, and thank you so much. Before I hand over to Ms. Catherine, who will give us the closing remarks, I have inserted our YouTube channel ID in the chat box, as well as the website to our website as well, because this recording will be available. So you can actually download it on our YouTube channel. If you want it via mail, perhaps you can drop me an email. I'll also leave my email address in the chat box. And you can still get in touch with me if you want any of the presentations that were delivered today as well. So allow me to welcome Ms. Catherine, who will give us the closing remarks before we close off this seminar. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, moderator of the session. Please allow me to address you all as colleagues today, because I realize we have a common responsibility towards raising awareness and ensuring the realization of water for peace. So to you all, good afternoon, colleagues. Surely we all agree that we had an enlightening webinar commemorating the World Water Day with the theme Leveraging Peace, Water for Peace. I'm humbled and inspired by the depth of insight, the breadth and commitment we have witnessed today. Let me take this time to thank the SGSP IWRM Network and Communication Officer, Ms. Ronell, who directed the session today. Ma'am, you did an exceptional work. We began the session with a message from Prof. Alfolo, the SGSP IWRM Director. He introduced the session and highlighted the importance of water in the basket of the commemoration of the World Water Day. A reminder to be encouraged to contribute to water conservation and sustainability in realization of the SDG 6 on water. My colleagues in the program, IWRM SGSP, Ms. Kanyama and Mr. Tefila gave some insightful presentations. Ms. Kanyama has highlighted the importance of innovation, technology in mitigating the conflicts over water resources. It is worth noting the relevance that technology plays in our lives, more so our modern lives. As such, adoption of technology in the water space should be embraced. The other speaker, Mr. Tefila, has taken us through the importance of mapping and monitoring transboundary water resources and its linkages towards embracing the trade-offs of all for promoting peace among the riparian states. A special note of gratitude goes to our guest speaker, Prof Larry Swatuk, whose engagement and enthusiasm in this webinar has been great through informative insights shared. I can vividly recall when he started his presentation, he touched on recognizing and encouraging women in the water space. I, from the bottom of my heart, applaud you for doing that. We need more of you. Prof encouraged us to recognize the work he's doing in the Environmental Peace Building Association, and for us to be inspired to support and join the initiative, all in the quest for leveraging for peace. He also spoke on strategies for peacemaking and conflict resolution as an option in reconceptualizing it from the top decision makers or the political stage. So furthermore, he spoke on how nations can be united for a common peace, considering key functional aspects which speak to remediations for peace. I bet everyone here learned something new, the negative peace and positive peace he spoke about. The environment cannot be left out in the whole discussion. Prof touched on the environment aspect in connection to the water space. Peace and justice go hand in hand, but very often justice is left out. That was also a striking feature from his presentation. Furthermore, we could note that science research can provide a backbone on which durable peace can be drawn. The importance of water is further emphasized by conflicts which arise over the resource. So all in all, when he wrapped up the presentation, he touched on the social discourses surrounding sustainable water management. So in his words, he touched on an important point that we should all note, that we should take water as a peacemaker, a builder, or a keeper. In his preaching note, do you believe? Our distinguished speakers, thank you for highlighting the urgency of sustainable water management, highlighting innovative strategies to mitigate conflicts over water resources, and presenting a hopeful vision of cooperation and peace fostering through shared water stewardship. Following the three speakers today, Maria and Tafila, they talked more on water, and Prof Larry summarized with peace. The theme was adequately captured. Your contribution have not only enriched our understanding, but have also charted a path forward for collective action. In closing, I invite you to join me in thanking everyone, not just our speakers and organizers, but each other for the collective spirit of determination and hope that has permitted today's webinar. Taking away from the discussions, collaborations as a remedial tool stood out from the contributions of participants. To our organizers, the SGSP IWRM Secretariat, Directorate of Research, Innovation and Partnership, NAST community, and everyone online, thank you for embracing this occasion. You are all equally acknowledged for creating a platform for critical conservations fit for conversations leveraging for peace. Thank you, one and all, for your invaluable contributions and for joining us in commemorating the World Water Day 2024. Together, let us continue to leverage water for peace today, tomorrow, and forever. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Catherine, for the warm and powerful closing remarks. And it's a wrap. Thank you so much, Prof. I hope to see you soon again, and I hope we can still keep in touch. Thank you all for attending the seminar. Don't forget to check out the link in the chat box that can help you access the recording for this seminar. The presentations, you can share your email. I'll send them to you. And once again, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Prof.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Prof. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you.